You are not my daughter. My daughter wouldn't be this pathetic, shameless, and desperate to force her way where she doesn't belong. Those were my mother's words, spoken in front of the entire board of directors, right as I stood to present the project I had spent 3 years building. If you've ever been told by your own family that you don't belong, don't look away. Because this story doesn't end in silence. It ends in reckoning. The room was colder than I remembered. Maybe it was the air conditioning, or maybe it was the way Vivian's stare could strip warmth from bone. The conference table, 40 feet of polished walnut, sat between me and the people who had once pretended to be my family. From the far end, their silence hung like a sentence, already past. I adjusted my navy dress, deliberately professional, deliberately forgettable. My heels made no sound on the stone tile. No one offered a greeting. No one looked up. Except Grant, of course. His smirk was practically carved into his face. I'd rehearsed this presentation for weeks, ran it by professors at Harvard, had it peer-reviewed by logistics experts, trimmed every slide to the essentials. I'd flown in early, skipped celebration dinners, ignored my mother's gentle pleas to at least smile today. This was the moment. The pitch that would prove I belonged here. Not as someone's niece, not as a legacy hopeful, but as a strategist in her own right. The monitor flickered to life. Slide 1. Predictive logistics. Real-time optimization across coastal warehouses. Thank you all for making time. I began, steady, rehearsed. What I'm proposing is a 3-phase model that leverages real-time inventory tracking, predictive routing, and adaptive load balancing. We've identified... Julia. Vivian's voice cut through my words like a scalpel. I stopped. She didn't look angry. That would have meant she cared. No, she looked bored. We've reviewed your proposal, she said. It's passionate, energetic, but Morgan Group doesn't gamble with systems we can't control. We don't do disruption. We do tradition. I glanced at the board members. Uncles, cousins by marriage, distant relations who hadn't spoken to me in years. Not one raised an eyebrow. Grant chuckled. She wants to overhaul freight ops with a TED Talk. Someone snorted behind a mug. I didn't catch who. I swallowed hard. The East Coast division is hemorrhaging. This model, if piloted properly, could cut losses by 17% in Q3 alone. It's not about disruption. It's survival. Vivian leaned forward slightly. And you think you're the one to lead that? I'm not asking to lead it, I replied, too quickly. I'm asking for permission to prove it works. Vivian didn't blink. You're smart, Julia. No one's questioning that. But legacy leadership is about more than intelligence. It's about alignment, about presence. I blinked. Presence? People need to feel authority, she said gently, like she was breaking news of a death. Not energy, not drive, presence, gravitas. And with love, sweetheart, that's not what you project. Grant rolled his eyes. It's fine. She'll do great in PRA. Few polite chuckles followed. My stomach burned, but my expression didn't move. I turned back to the screen. I had 10 more slides. I'd explain them. I had to. You will no longer be included in executive briefings or operational discussions, Vivian said, now final. Let's explore options better suited to your talents. External initiatives, perhaps. The air seemed thinner. My throat clenched around words I couldn't find. I earned this, I said softly. Vivian tilted her head. Family doesn't mean access, Julia. It means knowing your place. That was it. Verdict delivered. I gathered my notes, fingers stiff. The board watched with the detached interest of museum patrons. No one stopped me. No one said goodbye. My chair scraped lightly as I rose. I walked out with my back straight. Past the elevator, the oil portraits stared down like judges. My grandfather, the founder. My father, removed from the line of succession before I was born. Vivian, captured mid-rise in her tailored power suits. Grant's frame was already prepared, waiting for the day he would be installed above the mantel like some Roman bust. At the lobby, I paused beneath the company crest. The receptionist didn't even glance up. My phone buzzed. A new email. From Marcus Lane. Subject? Quiet isn't the same as defeat. Meet me tomorrow. I think we both know Morgan Group isn't as stable as they pretend. I stared at it for a long moment. Marcus Lane, former CFO, once exiled quietly for conflict of philosophy. I'd heard rumors that he had raised objections, that he'd uncovered numbers no one wanted seen. Now he was reaching out. To me. They didn't just deny me a seat at the table. They locked the whole damn room. But they forgot who taught me how to build. They silenced me with one meeting. I replied with 5 years of silence they didn't hear coming. The walls were white. Cheap white, paint flaking in corners where humidity had fought back. My desk was a repurposed workbench from a hardware store liquidation. The floorboards creaked like an old house that didn't want to be disturbed. Outside the second-story window, Venice Beach sweltered beneath the late spring haze. This place didn't look like a headquarters. That was the point. I sat cross-legged on the couch, laptop open, coffee gone cold. The spreadsheet on my screen blinked back at me, row after row of warehouse routing data. No logos, no branding, just raw efficiency. Hidden behind shell contracts and layered vendors, Vantax Holdings had become the invisible circulatory system for almost every freight flow west of the Rockies. And no one, not even Morgan Group, had any idea who controlled it. Footsteps echoed from the back hallway, followed by the clink of a metal thermos. Marcus Lane appeared, sleeves rolled, tie loose, eyes sharper than ever. "They're running blind," he said without greeting, dropping into the seat across from me. The last quarterly filings? Grant shaved 10% off ops losses using deferred revenues and ghost accounts. I didn't look up. He's been doing that since 19. Maybe, but now it's criminal. I turned the laptop so he could see. Ella found it this morning. Payment loops from Morgan's B2B contracts rerouted through third-tier shell vendors. Most of them lead straight back to freight consolidation centers we manage. Marcus blinked. So they're subcontracting to us. Without knowing they're subcontracting to us? 82% of the West Coast flow, at minimum, I said. Through 6 intermediaries, none of which tie to my name. Yet. Marcus gave a low whistle. You've built a kingdom in a closet. It had to look like noise, I said. Too small to notice, too efficient to question. He leaned forward. What happens when they do notice? I smiled faintly. That depends on what I want them to find. The door opened with a soft creak. Ella Lynn stepped in, holding a tablet, a little breathless like always. She spoke without preamble. Grant's numbers don't line up. Not just fudged. Fabricated. Warehouse 12 reports 40% capacity, but satellite data shows full turnover. Billing is double actual load. Marcus took the tablet, scanned the screen. They're inflating throughput? Or hiding shrinkage? Ella replied. Either way, the math is cosmetic. I stood, walked to the whiteboard, and uncapped a dry marker. If they're over-reporting here, they're padding investor confidence, maybe even internal projections, which means they're lying to their own board. Marcus exhaled through his nose. This is exactly why I left. But you could expose it all. I looked at him. That's not enough. Exposing it publicly turns me into a disgruntled niece with a grudge. We need precision, clean evidence, clean delivery, clean impact. My palm met the edge of the table. Sharp, deliberate. Then we need proof. I want every funnel, every ledger. If we do this, we do it clean. The room fell silent. Nathaniel appeared at the door a moment later, sleeves rolled to the elbow, clipboard under one arm. He didn't speak. Just walked over, reached into his jacket, and placed a USB drive on the desk. This is everything from the Morgan consolidation node in Fresno. Routing orders, invoice timestamps, and mirrored audit trails. Cross-check it with our cash intake for Q1. I picked up the drive, held it between my fingers. It was warm from his pocket. He looked me dead in the eye. "You'll want to see where this ends. It's deeper than you think." They never gave me a key to the boardroom, so I built the door, the room, and chose who entered. The chrome doors slid open with a soft hiss. Same hallway, same scent of floor polish and glass cleaner. The same stretch of deep blue carpet that once stopped me dead in my tracks when I was 24, forced to wait outside the room where real decisions were made. But not today. Today, I didn't knock. The 41st floor boardroom hadn't changed. White lights hummed overhead. Leather chairs curled around a custom walnut table like a nest of thrones. Portraits of past chairmen lined the far wall, eyes cast downward with smug approval. Vivian sat at the head, posture razor-sharp in her navy suit. Grant leaned back 3 seats down, lounging like he was preparing to yawn his way through another victory lap. They didn't recognize me. Or rather, they didn't understand who I was now. I wore a slate gray suit, tailored with the kind of precision that came from months of preparation, not vanity. No jewelry, no name tag. My briefcase bore no logo. I nodded politely to the assistant by the screen, plugged in the drive, and loaded the slide. "Thank you for the time," I said, stepping forward. "On behalf of Vantex Holdings, I'd like to discuss renegotiating the terms of our logistics contracts ahead of the upcoming renewal cycle." Grant blinked, glanced at Vivian like he'd misheard. He leaned forward. "That's not how we operate." Vivian narrowed her eyes. Vantex Holdings usually sends a procurement liaison, not a direct rep. I turned toward the screen. "This will take 3 minutes." The first slide populated, a color-coded bar chart, clearly labeled. The room fell quiet. I turned back to face them. 82%, I said. "That's the portion of Morgan Group's logistics revenue currently tied to routing operations subcontracted to Vantex Holdings." Vivian sat upright. "You're bluffing." I didn't respond immediately. I walked to the center of the room, letting the click of my heels fill the silence they once used to drown me. "I'm not," I said, "because Vantex Holdings is my company. I've been your lifeline for the past 3 years." Chairs shifted. One board member coughed. Another frowned, scrolling frantically on a tablet. Grant squinted, shaking his head. "Wait. What? What are you even talking about?" "My name is Julia Morgan," I said, voice level. "Founder and CEO of Vantex Holdings, operating under Vanguard Equities until full acquisition in 2021. For the last half-decade, my firm has handled over 80% of your freight flow west of the Mississippi, through layered shell vendors and intermediaries. You didn't know it was me, because I made sure you wouldn't." Grant pushed back from the table. "You can't just—" "You don't have to believe me," I interrupted, pressing the remote. The second slide appeared. It wasn't a graph. It was a table of invoices, dates, dollar amounts, contract IDs, all showing clear cross-routing from Morgan to intermediaries, then to Vantex. Vivian's jaw tightened. I met her stare. "You think this is revenge?" Her silence was answer enough. I clicked to the next slide. "It's not. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for facts. And you're not ready for them." The boardroom froze. And then, as if on cue, the rear doors clicked open. Marcus Lane stepped through, dressed like the ghost of the past they'd tried to bury. In his hands, a 2-inch thick folder, spine marked in red. He walked to the center of the room and placed it on the table with a quiet, final thud. "We'll begin the independent audit at 9 a.m. sharp," he said. "You may want to read before then." They thought the numbers would save them. I came to show them the numbers were the crime. No one touched the coffee. The long glass carafe sat untouched at the sideboard, steaming faintly, ignored by men and women who once discussed mergers over espresso and croissants. Today, their hands clutched paper. Real paper. Printed summaries, balance sheets, red ink annotations that wouldn't vanish with a keystroke. I stood at the head of the table, same position Vivian used to occupy, though she now sat 4 seats down, lips pressed tight, as if holding her face together with sheer will. Grant was beside her, eyes darting between charts and his own trembling fingers. He looked like someone who'd forgotten how to breathe. "Let's begin," I said. Marcus Lane nodded from my right, sliding a packet forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. In the second quarter of 2023, $2.6 million was listed under miscellaneous operational offsets. The same happened in the third quarter, the fourth quarter, and again this year, each time escalating. He flipped the next page. Total unaccounted funds, $11.3 million, shifted from quarter to quarter, disguised under general categories, none of which were disclosed to the board. One of the independent directors shifted uncomfortably. The other scribbled a note. Grant cleared his throat. None of it was theft. It was temporary, he said. Short-term adjustments to stabilize investor confidence. I didn't look at him. Marcus did. Investor confidence built on fiction is fraud, Mr. Morgan, especially when used to inflate Q4 bonuses and executive payouts. Grant opened his mouth again. Vivian touched his forearm, silencing him. I reached for the remote. The screen lit up behind me. No charts, no colors. Just a paused video. Date stamped, low resolution from an internal office camera. I pressed play. Vivian's voice crackled over the speakers. "I don't care what the original files say. Run the clean versions. No point in alarming the board with raw data they won't understand." The silence afterward was heavier than the words themselves. Vivian leaned forward, voice low. "Context matters. That clip is out of..." I pressed the remote again. Side-by-side slides appeared. One showing actual ledger entries tracked from internal sources. The other, inflated summaries filed with shareholders. Side by side, color-coded, date-matched. I turned to the board. Without Vantax Holdings contracts, Morgan Group would have posted a negative net operating margin for 3 consecutive quarters. The only reason this company looks solvent is because my logistics chain was propping it up. One of the directors leaned back, rubbing his temple. Another cleared her throat. "Is there any legal exposure here?" Marcus replied calmly. "If we go public with this now, yes. If we report it internally, accept oversight, and take corrective action, possibly not." I reached into my folder, pulled out 2 envelopes. Thick, sealed. "Option 1, I said. You accept a full internal investigation. Grant resigns. Vivian steps down from active authority. The board installs interim oversight, and we renegotiate our contracts with transparency." A beat of silence. I laid the second envelope beside it. Option 2. All Vantax contracts terminate within 48 hours. And this file, I gestured to the folder Marcus had dropped yesterday, goes directly to the SEC. Vivian sat still, then smiled. Not warmly. "You're bluffing, Julia." I looked her in the eye. My voice didn't rise. "Am I?" I slid one last document onto the table. Thicker than the rest. Stamped with a red seal. Notarized. Underneath it, a USB drive. The room leaned forward. "The original will of Harold Morgan," I said, with accompanying video recording. Both authenticated. Both sealed since 2015. Never revoked. Vivian's smile faltered for the first time, and then, finally, broke. They tried to rewrite the legacy. They just forgot the ink of truth never fades. The room felt smaller without the rest of the board. No more suits glancing at watches. No assistant hovering near the espresso machine. No distraction to hide behind. Just 5 people and the undeniable weight of a truth long buried, dragged into the light, inch by inch. I sat at the end of the table this time, not standing, not posturing, just waiting. Vivian perched at the opposite end, her posture brittle. Grant sat beside her, shoulders hunched, hands clasped like a child scolded in public. Marcus remained standing, arms folded, silent but watchful. The two independent directors flanked him like a quiet jury. They hadn't spoken much since yesterday, but the growing tension in their expressions told me enough. "I want to be clear," I said, voice calm. "This isn't a power play. This is rectification." From my briefcase, I drew the USB drive and slid it into the laptop. The screen flickered, and there he was, my grandfather, Harold Morgan, Chair Emeritus, founder, the man who built Morgan Group from a shipping office in Long Beach and never once looked at me like I was less for being his granddaughter. The video was old, but the clarity in his voice hadn't aged. "If Julia ever returns to claim her place," he said, steady and sure, "give her everything. She's the only one with the fire, the mind, and the spine to do what this company needs." The room was dead quiet. I let the words hang. Then, without a word, I placed the printed will on the table, gently rotated so Vivian could see the seal. Notarized. Dated 2015. Accompanied by a legal affidavit confirming chain of custody from Harold's personal lawyer. "In this version," I continued, "my grandfather grants me 12% of voting shares and assigns me provisional authority to appoint a CEO if the board is found unstable, defined as suffering 2 or more ethical breaches in a fiscal year." Vivian's knuckles whitened around the armrest. "That version was never executed," she snapped, her voice too loud in the quiet. Marcus stepped forward, calm as ever. "Actually, it was. Filed with Preston and Lane LPP. Stored off-site per Harold's written request. Here's the verification from the notary public and the original retention contract signed by Harold himself." He slid another document forward. One of the directors reached for it. I watched Vivian's eyes, and for the first time I saw it. True panic. Not frustration, not anger, real fear. Not of me, but of losing control. Beside her, Grant shifted. "You lied to me too?" he asked quietly. "All these years?" Vivian didn't answer. He turned to me. "Did you know?" "No," I replied. "Not until 3 months ago. Marcus brought me the files after reconnecting with Harold's former counsel." Grant stared at the table. The same table he once said I didn't deserve to sit at. "I trusted you," he whispered, almost to himself. One of the directors looked up. "I think we've seen enough." The other nodded. "We call for an emergency vote." No one objected. The motion passed, unanimously. "Effective immediately," the first director said. "Grant Morgan is removed as Chief Financial Officer. Vivian Morgan is suspended from all official duties pending further review," the second added, "and Ms. Julia Morgan will be appointed as Interim Chief Executive with oversight from the independent board." Silence followed. No applause, no gasps, just consequence. Vivian didn't speak again. She stood, chin high, and left the room without a backward glance. Grant remained seated, blinking slowly, like trying to wake from a bad dream. Marcus exhaled. I gathered my documents. There was no rush now. Later, back in my private office, once hers, I opened my inbox. A new message had arrived, flagged priority. From Harvard Business School, Events Committee. Subject keynote invitation, Reclaiming Power from Rejection to Reinvention. We'd be honored to have you speak at this year's Leadership Summit. I stared at it for a long moment, then clicked Mark as unread, and turned back to work. They built their empire keeping me out. Today, I walked into its highest room, with the master key. The 42nd floor had always been quiet. Even when I was a child holding my father's hand as he passed his keycard across the reader for the last time, it felt like the air here belonged to someone else. To them. Back then, I sat cross-legged just outside the thick conference doors, tracing circles in the carpet, too young to understand the words philosophy misalignment, but old enough to feel shame when no one met my eyes. Today, the elevator opened for me. The new nameplate on the door read, Julia Morgan, Chief Executive Officer. The font matched Vivian's old one, but that was where the resemblance ended. I stepped inside. Same windows, Same view of Los Angeles spilling toward the horizon, but the energy had changed. No more oil paintings of past chairmen, no more gold-plated paperweights, just clean lines, natural light, and a desk that didn't try to prove anything. Marcus arrived first. He walked in without knocking. He didn't need to anymore. "You wanted me?" I nodded toward the glass conference room just outside. "Pull the files for departmental redundancy. We start trimming at noon. No sacred cows." He smiled faintly. "Even the legacy PR division?" "Especially them," I said. "They haven't adapted since 2009. By 2 p.m., the restructuring plan was finalized. I sent the internal memo myself. No PR team, no sugarcoating. To all employees, legacy isn't blood. It's responsibility. Change begins now. "JM." Across the tower, people whispered. Some with fear, some with hope. Downstairs, Vivian's silver SUV pulled away from the loading dock. Grant trailed behind her, pushing a single cart stacked with boxes, head low, face unreadable. Neither looked back. They didn't need to. The place no longer belonged to them. At 3:15, I stood in the central atrium. A maintenance tech waited beside a ladder and a velvet-covered frame. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. He removed the cloth. It was the Morgan Group family portrait, recently reframed. My grandfather in the center. And now my father, restored to his rightful place beside him. And next to him, me. No caption, just presence. Ella Lynn and Nathaniel Reyes arrived around 4. I handed them their contracts personally. "Executive Strategy Task Force," I said. "Report directly to me." Ella blinked. "Are you sure?" "I mean, I still wear hoodies to board meetings." "That's exactly why," I replied. The final board meeting began at 5. Smaller now, sharper. I sat at the head. Not because I wanted the symbolism, because that's where the responsibility sat. They listened as I walked them through the restructuring. And when I stood to close the meeting, I said only this: I didn't come back to reclaim a seat. I came back to rebuild the floor beneath it. Later, alone again in my office, I opened my personal inbox. One unread message. From Mom. "You did it, Jules. Grandpa would have been proud. But now, make it yours." I didn't respond. I just stared out the window, the skyline humming below, and let the silence feel like victory. Beneath the skyline that once symbolized exclusion, she now stood not as an heir reclaimed, but as a leader remade. The boardroom that once denied her became the very ground she restructured, not out of spite, but out of purpose. What they tried to erase through silence, manipulation, and bloodline politics, she resurrected through patience, strategy, and undeniable truth. Justice, though late, arrived with quiet precision. Not in a roar of vengeance, but in the calm clarity of accountability. Because when injustice meets unwavering courage, the final verdict doesn't just end an old chapter. It rewrites the legacy. Sometimes reclaiming your place isn't about returning to a seat you were denied. It's about rebuilding the floor beneath it. Stronger, fairer, and impossible to lock again. And if you've ever been cast aside, silenced, or told you didn't belong, know this: you don't need their permission to rise. You just need the truth, the will and the courage to build something they can't control. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to remember their worth, and subscribe for more stories that remind us. Power reclaimed is never given. It's built. He slept with me because I made him feel alive, unlike the walking corpse you've become. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words sliced deeper than any scream could. If you've ever given your whole heart only to be told you were never enough, keep watching. Because sometimes the person who breaks you is the one who owes you the loudest apology. It was one of those crisp Chicago afternoons in early October where the light felt sharper than it should, slanting through the amber-leafed trees and casting warm shadows on the porch. The air carried a promise of colder nights ahead. I had just finished my shift at the clinic, stopped by the grocery store, and was balancing 2 reusable bags while fishing out the keys when I spotted it. An ivory envelope, thick and expensive-looking, sitting neatly against the door frame like it had been hand-delivered. I nudged it inside with my foot, unlocked the door, and called out, "I'm home." Lily didn't respond, probably lost in her math homework again, but Noah came thudding around the corner in his socks, arms open for a hug. "Mom, guess what? My volcano model actually erupted today. Like, really." "That's amazing, sweetie." I kissed the top of his head and set the bags down. "Did you take pictures?" He nodded proudly. Mr. Chase filmed it for the school website. I smiled, tousling his curls. Then my eyes fell back to the envelope. It had slid beneath the shoe rack, just the corner peeking out like it was shy. I pulled it free, and my heart did this odd half-stutter as I read the embossed names: Chloe Bennett and Nathan Hale. My fingers tightened slightly, the edge of the envelope pressing into my skin. Ethan walked in